Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I am here today with co-pilot Kassi. Hi, Kassi.
Back again. Hi.
Kassi and I are here to just have a bit of a chat because we got some really great feedback about that dating episode that we had a couple of weeks back. And we had a couple questions about dating and self-worth, dating and masculine, feminine energy. It just seems like there's a bunch of interest in how to just enhance the understanding, but also the application of this when it comes to dating. And I think that for women who, myself included, who struggle with emotional eating or body image and things like that, dating can for sure be stressful, I would venture to say. Stressful, just a bit can be triggering. People can date from a place of not quite understanding how to attract and cultivate and build the type of relationship that they're looking for. And it can feel frustrating, disappointing, all these different things that could even be more triggering for emotional eating. So it becomes a cycle. And we got a couple of questions that we wanted to just talk about today because I think they'll inspire good conversation. So
we got a comment, not so much a question, but a comment, and they were talking about how I would love to hear you guys talk more about hypermasculine tendencies blocking our divine feminine / boarding off softness. And I think we got that message too after our previous episode together, our very last tandem episode, how we kind of elaborated a little bit more on that hypermasculine versus divine feminine type of complex. And I thought that was, I always just feel like that's a fun, interesting topic, especially when it comes to dating. And I think it's something that we don't really pay attention to when it comes to how our relationship with food actually impacts that and how we might be kind of hiding behind it. I would love to hear your thoughts though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm like a nerd for this type of conversations about dating and dating and relationships, just because I find that for so many women that struggle with emotional eating, they underneath are such deep desire for connection and for love, whether that's with themselves, with someone else. But I have to say that when it comes to the women that I work with, pretty much I always end up working with them around relationships, whether they want to attract a relationship or whether they're in a relationship where there's some sort of energetic misalignment or something that's feels a little bit off. There's a little bit of friction, and food and eating is being used as a way to soothe that feeling of discomfort or edginess. And so when we talk about the hypermasculine and when we talk about the divine feminine, I think what it really is just saying is that we need to understand how to not feel like we have to be the ones to initiate everything all the time. Right. And the thing is when it comes to feminine energy, the biggest tenet of feminine energy is to know yourself and be willing to feel your feelings and be willing to create the conditions for masculine energy to do its thing. And a lot of times, women who are not so connected to their feminine energy, which means they're not so comfortable with feelings, good and not so good, means they're not so comfortable with space. They're not so comfortable with waiting or just pause or things like that. And maybe in their lives, in their work life, essentially, they are bosses and take action and initiate. And that's actually their job, is they have to be the one moving things forward. They're not so comfortable not taking on that role in their dating life or in their personal relationships because it just feels really awkward and it feels really not like who they are. And so the tendencies that they bring to their job or to their work end up bleeding over into how they go about dating, which essentially is dating. When you're in the dating phase and you're not in a relationship phase, I think that's also really interesting to discern that dating is not a relationship. When you're dating, you're not invested with somebody yet. You're still pre-qualifying them. So a lot of times when you're pre-qualifying somebody, the biggest thing that you need to understand when you're pre-qualifying someone is what you want, what you need, how you want to feel. And if you're not connected to that, and instead you're just worried about, and you're just thinking about, is this person going to like me? Let me get to the next date, right? You're forward thinking. I have to make this happen. You're in your masculine energy and you're not allowing for what you really want. And I'm not saying this is all women, but most women that I talk to that are dating men, and that's what who I'm speaking to, because that's what I know for myself, that are dating men want a man who's going to lead, who's going to be able to take charge, make a plan, take them out on a date, provide a opportunity for them to feel special. And that's what women are looking for in a romantic relationship when they're dating, right? When I get to the crux of it, that's what they want, right? There are a lot of women who are just like, I don't want a relationship. I love being single. But we're not talking to those women now. We're talking to the women who really want to be in a relationship with a man. And I think what they mean is a masculine guy. When you want to be with a masculine guy, you can't bring your masculine tendencies that you might have at work with you, because then you're going to be competing with him and it's not going to be compatible. And so the divine quote unquote feminine energy isn't just about doing nothing and just like being a goddess, right? It's about being in touch with your feelings, with how you want to feel, and then inviting somebody to provide that for you in collaboration, which means you need to communicate it to them how you want to feel in a way that's an invitation, not a demand.
When I think of masculine energies just within your own, I think about like that protector mentality, all of those different qualities that we assign to the masculine, specifically the protector, because when you're in this state of hypervigilance, when you're experiencing, emotional eating tendencies or just behaviors that aren't exactly helpful to your mental, the protector is so on. That's your outward kind of appearance. And so you're apprehensive to dating in general. You might swear it off, or you're just hypercritical of the people that you are inviting into your space, or, you're just closed off because you're trying to protect yourself. I don't want to say that's a bad thing. Like, you're protecting you're protecting your peace, but there comes a point where you're kind of like, oh, I'm hindering myself more than I'm helping myself in the long run by being so protective. I think when you pinpoint that protective nature and you're like, wait a minute, can I peek behind the curtain? Can I look through the window a little bit and see if there's even anything to be afraid of? You know what I mean? That we've built up this complex for so long of protecting ourselves that relationships are going to be bad when I get into them, or dating sucks, or all men suck, or whatever kind of narratives you've kind of created in your head to protect yourself becomes truth. And oftentimes the truths that we tell ourselves sometimes may be true, but oftentimes the truth that we tell ourselves aren't reality. Do I need to protect myself so much?
Absolutely. I think there's the masculine energy that's the barrier to entry of dating, like you described. And then there's the masculine energy that kind of hijacks you to having the relationship that you want, because that's a skill. So there's the protective barrier to entry masculine energy, where we're kind of might convince ourselves that we aren't interested in dating, or I don't have time, all that. That's very, very like epidermis level, like your skin level.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of peel that back and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I have been blocking it out and being super protective and using work and all these masculine style things. Like, I don't have enough time. I have to work. I have to do so many things. All those language, like doing, producing, all that stuff is very masculine language. thinking all the time ahead about everything I have to do and plans. That for sure is one area. But then let's say you get to the place where you're like, yeah, that's been a protective mechanism for me. So I'm going to work on that. And I'm going to like get very courageous, get more vulnerable with myself. And, I'm going to put myself out there because I really do want to cultivate a relationship with somebody. That's an amazing place to be. And you need to go into that understanding what is the dynamic of a relationship that you're looking for. Because what happens is when you're on like the dermis level of that, the more masculine energy can show up. And you're even more vulnerable now, right? Because now you've kind of overcome a barrier to entry and now you're going into it and you're putting yourself in a vulnerable space. And your masculine energy can just show up again as a protector, right? Where you go out with somebody, it's great. You have a great attraction, a great chemistry. And, you come home and then you don't hear from him for 2 days and you're like, should I reach out? Like, should I initiate? Should I remind him that I had a great time? Should I text and thank him again? Should I do all this stuff again? That's your masculine energy moving things forward again, getting in the way, like moving things forward. Now, if you're a woman who isn't looking for a certain dynamic where you're going to find where you're looking for a partner and a man that's going to lead and that's going to show you that he can take charge and make plans and lead, then go ahead, text. If you're looking for a dynamic where you want to be the one in control all the time, making the plans, calling all the shots, doing all that stuff, and he just comes along for the ride, totally do it. But if you're not interested in that, the hardest work you have to do is embody the feminine energy, which is in the creating the space for, and I think relaxing is even a little bit misguided.
Mm-hmm.
You have to relax back, but there's a whole this like lean back. You have to create the space for the masculine energy to come in. But sometimes you also need to set the stage.
Right.
By making it clear what you're looking to feel.
And the only way to be clear about that is to really know.
To know. So a lot of the work that you have to do before you start dating is to be like, and this is a lot of what I do in decoding permanent weight loss, because a lot of creating a connection with yourself and losing weight and creating a connection with yourself and having a relationship are the same skills.
Right.
Is you need to know how you want to feel and how you're going to make yourself feel that way. What are the ways that you need to do it for you, and what are the ways that you want a partner to make you feel that way? So an example of this is a perfect example, and I had to go through this myself as a reformed woman who really wanted to be in my feminine energy in a partnership, but was like fully in the masculine all the time in my relationships, like feeling hyper vigilant, responsible to like make sure that he knew that I was interested. Oh, maybe I should text him and make the plan now and all that stuff. And again, like I said, dating and a relationship is very different. When you're in a relationship, it's a different story, right? Like you're not waiting for your boyfriend or your husband to text you. That's not the way it goes. But in dating, it's very different. You want to set up an established dynamic for the most part. And so I think it's really key that the biggest job that you're going to have when you are now past the barrier to entry where your masculine energy is getting in the way, and now you're in the I'm out in the wild dating, right? And getting feedback and all that stuff, you're going to have a lot of feelings. There's going to be a lot of internal stimuli. You're going to go out, you're going to be connected to someone, you're going to feel chemistry, you're going to come home, and then your masculine energy is going to be like, oh, yeah, but I mean, like, what's the big harm if I just like text him and I just say like, thanks again, or you don't hear from him for 2 days and you say like, hey, that was really fun last night. Maybe it's my turn to ask him to hang out. So I'll just be like, what's up? Let's, you make that initial bid. And I think that's your masculine energy. And so the biggest job for you is to learn how to take care of your own energy. So now you have to be like, what is the reason why I feel like I have to do this? It's the same thing with food. You feel that urgency to eat that food. It's the urgency feeling. It's that anxious attachment, right? It's like, why am I feeling this way? That's when you turn towards yourself. So instead of eating the bag of chips, instead of texting the guy, you say, wow, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, like urgency. What's that about? And you like look in yourself and you figure out what is underneath that. And like I said, I have a lot of tools that I go through with my clients and students in that. And you get to the root of what exactly you want to feel. And then you just hold the space for yourself. And you remind yourself that you're looking for somebody who's going to lead. And you don't need to text this person because they're already showing you that he's not leading right now. So I always say you should date multiple people at once, especially in the dating phase, because like, why not? And, that's that. And you just continue to hold space for yourself, put yourself out there, get information, get feedback. But when you feel that urgency, remind yourself that chemistry and attraction is not compatibility. Compatibility is going to be with somebody who gives you the opportunity to feel what you need to feel in a relationship. And so when you're in your feminine energy, that means that you're also holding space for your masculine energy, which essentially is that urgency to reach out and move it forward. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's almost like opening yourself up to receiving, which is something that women who experience this aren't used to doing because they're used to being the doer, the deliverer, like the executor. And so when you kind of flip back and you're in that trying to be cognizant
Mhm.
of receiving, you're like, this feels unnatural. But the only way to get to it to feel natural is to do it and to be shaky and to, you know what I mean, really sit with that feeling.
Correct. And also the thing about receiving is that it's out of your control.
Mhm.
And I think that's also the important thing with understanding that you're not in control of when someone's going to offer you something.
Mhm. That's such a listen to that again because it's true. That's why we're so uncomfortable with receiving because we don't know if we're going to receive. And then we don't know what to do with it when we hold it, when we get it in our hands.
Exactly. We don't know what to do with it. And also, sometimes when you're in the receiving, you not only have to know how to receive, you also have to be willing to be patient, especially in the dating phase. So, this is something also when you're in the dating phase and there's no investment, there's no commitment yet. And I'm sorry, but a 7-hour date where you talk about everything in your life and like you've shared trauma bond and like the whole thing and you've talked about everything and you've connected so much is not investment. It's just a really long date where you overshared, where you shared a lot, right? And
Mhm.
not to say that that can't turn into something, but that is not investing. That's not an investment in the relationship. And so sometimes what could happen is somebody can have that experience with somebody and then you don't hear from them for 5 days and you feel totally shafted basically.
Right.
And that's when your masculine energy will be like, well, we had such a great connection. Like he took me, like your mind is going to, your masculine energy and your mind, which is your mind, is going to go because masculine energy is mind, feminine energy is like heart and feelings. And so your mind is going to go and give you all the reasons why it's your turn to reach out. And what happens is that you just get into your head about all of it. And then the guy does reach out to you 5 days later, like, "Hey, how are you?" And you have created this whole thing in your head about like, "Ah, what an asshole, like I didn't hear from him," and like all this stuff, when at the end of the day, there was no investment. And so I think being in your feminine energy is also detaching from all of that head stuff and being willing to receive that from a place of warmth. I had experiences when I was much more skilled in this feminine energy where I'd go out with somebody. I thought we had a great time. 5 days later, I heard from him. And maybe 5 years before that, I would have felt like, oh, I'm going to be a bit passive aggressive or like I'm going to play a game. I'm not going to respond. But instead, it's like you kind of zoom out and you have this like spacious view. That's what feminine energy is. So like I could receive him 5 days later from a place of like, oh, really happy to hear from you. with no heaviness around it because we weren't invested, which is another reason why I don't really recommend having super long dates in the like dating phase, like the first 1 to 3, 4 dates.
When you allow yourself to pull back and be like, there is no commitment here, there is no investment just yet, you're able to enjoy it for what it is. And then allow yourself to be like, maybe I do want to see it progressing, or there's no commitment there. So you're kind of like, maybe I don't really see this progressing. You give yourself the freedom to choose when you give yourself that lightness.
Which is self-worth. That is self-worth. You're not looking to be chosen. You're not looking to like, finally be the one. You're looking to have your own self-worth. And the truth is, the guys that had reached out to me after 5 days, I'm not entangling into like a drama with them, getting passive aggressive or all that. But what I did learn is that it didn't feel good to me that I had a date with somebody that I thought I connected with and I didn't hear from them for 5 days, actually. I was able to receive like happy to hear from him, but coming from a place of self-worth and empowerment, I would always say, oh, it's so good to hear from you. And somehow I would let him know that I like more consistent communication with people that I'm getting to know and dating. So I make it known in a way that's not making him feel bad, but just like an invitation to let him know about me. And if he's interested in me, he will ask me out again. Or he will make sure that next time, right? So if he's like, oh yeah, I hear that, I get that. And then he asks me out again, and we go out again. And if he heard me, he'll text me a day later. If you want to be the feminine partner in the relationship, you have to set up the conditions for your needs to be met by expressing what you want, how you want to feel, what's important to you, your values, and then leaning back and being patient for them to do it on their own time. Now, if their own time is too long for you, that's totally valid also. They're not for you. It's not that they're assholes, right? They're not for you. Even if you guys had the best conversation and the best chemistry and you guys have so much in common, he's not for you if the root of the relationship dynamic is going to make you feel anxious and stressed and pull you into your masculine or make you feel like you have to continually have conversations and talk about stuff.
Totally. And I think this actually segues into our next question, but that idea of having those non-negotiables and being aware of what your non-negotiables are and communicating those effectively so that the boundaries are already in place so that the right person will fall perfectly within those boundaries. I say that because we got an additional question too that was, I want to heal, but I'm struggling with sticking to my goals because they're interfering with my dating life/relationships. It's so much easier to just go along with whatever my partner is doing than fight against our schedules/habits. And what immediately came to mind for me when I was reading this was exactly what you were saying of making your goals and your non-negotiables known. I have a funny story because just it's so relevant to me right now. I recently took a week off completely unplugged, and I'm not exactly somebody who has a very strong routine. I've very much fallen off of that. And so I really committed myself to making sure that this week is getting back on that and figuring out what makes me feel really good and what are some things that I really want to commit myself to that I know will kind of make my day better, make my mood better, and just overall life better. Those were just things that I can do. Now, full disclosure, I have a boyfriend and we live together. So making changes is often affecting him, especially when it's, say, for example, a morning routine or something along those lines. And so this question was just funny to me because I was actually talking to somebody just recently about this, about how it's so much easier to stick to these changes that you're making. Because let's be clear, I wasn't doing them before, so it's not like I'm very good at it and it's like second nature to me just yet. I'm trying to implement a new change and I wasn't sure how he would react to it or if he would encourage me to do these things or if I could do it without his encouragement even. And so what I was saying to this person was, I had let him know that these things were really important to me, like this list of things, like not having my phone before I've been awake for an hour or before I've done these things, like my mindfulness. I like to meditate in the morning now. And so I was like making sure that these points are hit before we do X, Y, and Z. And so there was one day that I got up and he started watching like TV or something like that. And I was like, no, this kind of goes against this new change that I'm trying to make. So I was like, can we actually watch it after? But making him aware of these things, these changes that I was trying to make. Once I had said these things to him and communicated to him that, you know, this is important to me, this is a change I'm trying to make, I would really like your support with this. The next day, he was like, okay, let's do it together. And not only did we have that moment to do something together, I was also solidifying in my mind that this is something important to me and I can do it next to him, around him. And so that's my direct, answer to her question, being that, making those non-negotiables known, and not even you have to change for me. It's that I'm trying to do this thing and I would really like you to see that. And then it becomes, they're more aware of it and they're more like, oh, well, how can I step my behavior a little bit either around or within that change that you're trying to make to support you?
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is full on empowered feminine energy, right? Like and versus disempowered feminine energy. And I think that when we talk about divine feminine energy, I think that's a fine, but I think ultimately empowered feminine energy means that you know yourself, know what you need for yourself. You're willing to communicate that from a place of worth, which means that you're letting someone know in a way where you're inviting them to get to know you better and to provide an opportunity to let you feel good because of something you're doing for yourself, rather than disempowered feminine energy, which is not communicating that and then just getting mad afterwards or like passive aggressive afterwards. And the other person is like, I had no idea that that was important to you, because you're just kind of like going about, trying to fit it in, but you're not telling anybody because you don't want to make waves, but you're hoping it'll fit it in. And then it doesn't fit in. And then you get resentful and then you get passive aggressive. And then the whole energy is weird. That's disempowered. But being proactive and recognizing that part of being the feminine partner is to create an emotionally safe environment, right? It's to create an environment that allows for needs to be seen, heard, and met.
Including your own.
Especially your own. That's what empowered is. And then when you know your own needs, you know what you need to do to get that met. That's why it's being single can be easier. And then why when you feel like you've mastered it, right? Like, oh, I've mastered some stuff and all this stuff. It's why there's the intrapersonal and then the interpersonal, because, we can go from having these coping mechanisms and like abusing ourselves and not treating ourselves well, and then getting to doing the intrapersonal work where we then know our needs, can meet our needs, do the work of making those a priority for ourselves. It's like we stop working 12 hours a day. Now we work 8 hours a day and take a walk around the park. That could be really hard to create that condition for ourselves where we're leaning into getting our own needs met and being our own feminine energy partner for ourselves, right? But then once you take that into another person, different skills, communication, and being able to express yourself in a way that's collaborative and invite somebody to support you is a very different animal, in my opinion. And I think that with that question where someone said,
it's so much easier to just go along with whatever my partner is doing than fight against our schedules.
Right. So I think that is something that happens all the time, especially when you're already in a relationship.
Right.
And I think that going along, just being passive is not being feminine, is not feminine energy. Passivity is disempowered feminine energy. Empowered feminine energy means that you are making sure that you are taking care of you and inviting other people to support you in that. and you're giving them direction as to how to support you in that. Masculine energy is when you just steamroll and make the plan.
No, I totally. And I love that the core message in that is the foundation comes from you first. The dating scene or the relationships and kind of the advancement of taking it out of yourself and, participating in a relationship, whether that be dating or, like an actual full relationship with somebody else, won't be good unless the foundation is good, until you're kind of clear with what you want and creating those foundations for you first. And then inviting somebody into your space and saying, I want the support. I welcome the support, even instead of being like, I don't need it. I don't need it.
Yeah. You can't cultivate feminine energy in a partnership unless you've been the feminine partner for yourself.
Until you embody it.
Until you embody it for yourself. That means that you are both the masculine and the feminine for yourself. These days, embodying masculine energy is so much more common for women just because we're working, we're managing, we're doing so much. The feminine energy part for ourselves, which is holding the space for ourselves, recognizing when our masculine energy wants to take charge and holding space for that, feeling it within ourselves and recognizing that in this lane, it's appropriate for the masculine energy to take charge. But in this lane, it's not, because in this lane, I want to create a scenario where I'm not the one in charge. So that's what you want. Your feminine energy needs to go inside to yourself and create that holding space and develop the strong skills of knowing yourself, communication, how to express yourself from a place that comes across as a request or an invitation rather than a demand or like a victim, like someone did something wrong, and do that and learn how to do that so that you can be both empowered in your feminine energy, which feels like you are in control and you do have your own agency, but also allow yourself to feel that yummy, nourishing feeling of being taken care of and supported and led, which is, I think, what a lot of the women, many of the women, most of the women that I work with want to feel in their partner, their romantic relationships, I would say, the ones that work with me. Because oftentimes when we emotionally eat, it's because we are connecting to that feminine part of ourselves that we're not living, we're not embodying yet.
It's a delicate balance.
Such a delicate balance. But I'm obsessed with this conversation.
We could go on forever. Like, I feel like there's so many different facets for it and so many different conversations that just spread out from it. So yeah. I love it.
Because, when we struggle with food, food is love, food is pleasure, relationships are about love and pleasure and everything. It's all overlapping. And so I definitely want to have more of these types of conversations. I'm definitely going to be offering more of these types of just products around and classes and stuff around the relationship piece soon. So I'm really excited for that. But yeah, today's episode was great. Yeah. Thanks, Kassi. Thanks so much for chatting. Thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe, leave a review, watch us on YouTube, leave comments there, questions there. Happy to answer questions. And yeah, we'll be back next week for another new episode. So thanks again. I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.